I'm calling to order this hearing. This is a public hearing of the Committee of the Whole of the Council of the District of Columbia. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chair of the Council and Chair of the Committee of the Whole. Today is Thursday, December 18th, 2025. The time is 8:54 in the morning, and we are having this hearing in room 412 of the John A. Wilson Building. This hearing is being recorded and will be available on the council's website, www.dccouncil.gov. The subject of this hearing is Bill 26-446, entitled University of the District of Columbia Change Order Number 2 to Contract Number GF 2021-C 2021, Consys, Inc., Approval and Payment Authorization Emergency Act of 2025. That is a long title. The purpose of this oversight hearing is to receive testimony regarding a retroactive contract between the University of the District of Columbia and Consys, Inc. to design and construct the relocation of the Learning Resources Division and Center for Advanced Learning on the university's Van Ness campus. The initial contract was deemed approved on February 5th, 2022. And on April 15th, 2024, change order number 1 was deemed approved. However, thereafter, the university made additional modifications to the scope of work, increasing the contract cost by an additional $2,070,000. The university failed to send the change order number 2 for these modifications before the start of the performance period, failed to seek approval during the modifications, and did not seek council approval until over a year after the work was completed. Now the university requests retroactive authorization and approval of the contract amount for work which was completed over a year ago, which does not please me or the council. So we have this hearing. We have one witness, and that witness is David Franklin, who is the Chief Operating Officer. If you could come forward. David Franklin is the Chief Operating Officer of the University of the District of Columbia. The record in this matter will be open for 2 weeks. That is, it will close at 5 p.m. on Friday, January 2nd, 2026. And since the government may be closed that day, probably folks should, if they have anything to submit, do it on or before December 31st. Good morning. Why don't you proceed?
Good morning, Chairman Mendelson, members of the Committee of the Whole. I'm David Franklin, Chief Operating Officer for the University of the District of Columbia. My testimony today will address the errors in the university contracting process that led to the failure to submit change order number 2 associated with the Academic Commons Project and Constance Award to the Council for review and approval. I want to start by offering my apologies that this lapse necessitated our appearance today. In preparation for a significant high-profile initiative, Building 41, the former site of the university library at the Van Ness campus was required to be vacated earlier than originally anticipated. This compressed timeline, combined with the need to ensure a functional space before the start of the 2024-25 academic school year, placed considerable pressure on the Academic Commons Project team and influenced the pace at which decisions were made. We fully recognize that operational urgency does not supersede compliance obligations. Even under accelerated conditions, adherence to proper procedures is essential, and we remain fully committed to strengthening our governance infrastructure to ensure this is not a reoccurrence. The Academic Commons, our library, renovation project originated initially in 2016 to relocate the Learning Resource Division, our Center for Advancement of Learning at the Van Ness campus, encountered significant and substantial delays driven by design revisions, permitting challenges, and infrastructure modernization requirements. The notice to proceed was issued in August 2022, extending the completion timeline into 2024. Board and council approvals were secured for the initial award. Change order number 2, totaling $2.07 million, was the result of restroom upgrades, IT system enhancements, and contractor project claims such as material storage and final work area cleanup. The work associated with these change orders began before the required board and council approval, resulting in a procedural failure. To mitigate the risk of future lapse, the university began implementing comprehensive reforms. The Office of Facilities and Real Estate Management in strengthening its construction management team by onboarding a capital project control specialist as well as a third-party construction manager who is experienced in high-profile district government projects. In addition to providing strategic oversight and budgeting control, scope management, and schedule adherence, the team will adopt and utilize standardized project management tools to improve tracking, reporting, and governance. The Office of Facilities and Real Estate Management, in coordination with the Office of Contracting and Procurement, will work closely with the contractor to anticipate potential change order requests and prevent uncontrolled additions to the project scope that could lead to cost overruns or schedule delays. This collaborative approach strengthens accountability for all parties, support timely identification of unforeseen conditions, and ensure proper review of submission of board and council packages. Additionally, we have begun restructuring the Office of Contract and Procurement to expand oversight, enhance compliance, and modernize procurement operations. We are currently developing 3 new executive level roles. 1, Vice President, Chief Contracting and Procurement Officer. This position, currently in recruitment, will elevate procurement oversight to the executive level, oversee risk management and contract governance, and strengthen internal controls and approval workflow while serving as the principal advisor to the university on procurement matters. 2, Associate Vice President for Capital Procurement. This position reflects the university's needs for specialized oversight of construction and capital project contracting. The Associate Vice President for Capital Procurement will lead all procurement related to construction, facilities modernization, and capital improvements while enhancing alignment with the district government's capital standards. And 3, an Associate Vice President for Operating and Procurement. This new role reflects the university's commitment to strengthening oversight of its end-to-end procurement lifecycle, ensuring all purchasing activities are efficient, transparent, and aligned with the district regulations and institutional priorities. This role will also support modernization of procurement processes, the strengthening of internal controls, and the enhancement of compliance, competitive sourcing, and contract management practices. I strongly believe these roles will significantly enhance capacity and accountability within the Office of Contracts and Procurement. The university has begun leveraging and expanding the use of electronic procurement system and invested in project management tracking tools to ensure full life cycle tracking and to fully automate procurement process. This technical modernization across all units will ensure real-time visibility, reduce manual errors, and support timely and accurate submission of governance bodies. Additionally, the university has initiated mandatory training for contracting and procurement personnel, emphasizing procurement law, DC Council requirements, and appropriate sequencing of contract actions. In October of 2024, the Office of Contracting and Procurement, along with the Office of the Chief Operating Officer, delivered an institutional-wide training titled Preventing Unauthorized Purchases and Understanding the Ratification Process for Non-Compliant Procurements. This is a comprehensive training framework that will be annual and mandatory, standardized across all procurement engaged units, focused on compliance, contract sequencing, process improvement, risk mitigation, delivered through online modules and in-person workshops. This framework will ensure the entire university community remain fully aware of its procurement responsibilities, and those responsible for contracting and procurement practices are regularly trained and developed. We acknowledge the seriousness of this contracting error that occurred and deeply regret the procedural failures that resulted in non-compliance. The corrective measures already underway and those still forthcoming reflect our commitment to enhancing transparency, strengthening internal controls, and ensuring that all procurement activities meet and exceed district requirements. Thank you for the opportunity to present this testimony. Joining me today is that of Vice President of Facilities and Real Estate Management, Javier Dusant, and Riza Lear, Deputy Chief Operating Officer. Welcome to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin. I appreciate that your testimony is admitting responsibility and speaking to how this will not occur again. I nonetheless have some questions. When I looked at the contract summary, the document that's submitted with the legislation, and looking at the exact title, Council Contract Summary, the statement with regard to K, item K, the reason why proposed change was sent to the council for approval after it is intended to take effect. The answer is the proposed change order is being sent to the council for approval after the work has been completed, as it was issued as a basic change directive to avoid interrupting the progress of the contract. What does that mean?
So the university became aware of the change order 2 requiring board and council approval, and during the approval process in February 2025, when the estimated basic change directive was issued. So the basic change directive, in essence, is a formal written instruction issued by the project owner, in this case UDC, that really allowed the contractor to continue work before the cost and schedule adjustments were fully recognized. So that allowed the project to continue while we went through this particular process, which is known as a basic change directive. That basic change directive is not just tied to UDC, but this is something that is done also at DGS and is a common practice in the construction industry.
And this change directive would have been issued by the university's Office of Contracting and Procurement?
It would have been issued initially, the sequence would have been through that of the Office of Facilities and Real Estate Management, and then they would have presented that to the Office of Contracting and Procurement.
And it didn't occur to them that the Board of Trustees had to approve this?
Well, when you looked at the BCD, the first one was about $990,000. So that would not have resulted in the board needing to approve, because the approval dollar amount is $1 million. So
the Board of Trustees approval?
Yes. So the first change order was only approximately, again, $990,000. So there was no need at that point in time to bring that before our board for approval.
I'm a little bit confused. So looking at the council contract summary, the original contract amount was 8.7, almost $8.8 million. And then change order number 1 was $1.8 million. And change order number 2 is $2.07 million. So when you say 800,000, I'm not following.
Yeah. So basic change order number 3, there's 2 change orders that prompt us going over the $1 million mark. Basic change order number 2 was for approximately $288,000, and basic change order number 3 was for $990,000. It was at that point we realized that this particular contract, this change order, would require board approval because at that point it went over the $1 million mark.
So you're referring to change orders, but that's different than the terminology I have.
May I?
Whoever, please.
Good morning, Chairman Mendelson. Javier Dusan here, Vice President of Facilities and Real Estate Management. So the way we proceed is we first identify the change that may happen. And in this case, we had first identified a change that we estimated to be at around $288,000. That's a BCD, Basic Change Directive, that we first issued, the university's contracting officer first issued to the
Which
contractor.
Mr. Franklin called a change order, and you're calling a change directive.
BCD, Basic Change Directive,
Directive.
correct.
Okay.
So that allows the contractor to proceed with that work while we finalize the actual costs. While we were working on that, then we became aware also of another potential change order, which became the BCD number 3, Basic Change Directive number 3, with an estimated cost of $700,000. Combine those two, the $288,000 for BCD2 and the $700,000 for BCD3, immediately triggered that, okay, this most likely is going to go over $1 million, which will then trigger that change order, the combination of those two BCDs, to be presented to the Board of Trustees for approval. But it took some time before we even understood how much these two combined basic change directive actually going to cost. Because again, we directed the contractor based on the initial estimates. So I hope that clarifies the,
It clarifies a little, but the change order number 2 is $2 million, and you've identified just over $1 million.
correct. So the difference is that there is another component, which are the PCRs, which are claims that the contractor submits to the university towards the end of the project. And our failure here was waiting to combine those three components, BCD2, BCD3, and the potential change requests, which are the claims that come from the contractor towards the end. And that at the end, after we obtain all that information from the contractor, that's when we realize what that final number was. So those are the three components that make up
Except the work was completed in, when was the work completed?
So the work was substantially completed in August of 2024.
August of 2024.
Correct.
Okay, it's still over a year before it comes to us. Has it even gone to the Board of Trustees?
Yes, sir, it has.
And when did it go to the Board of Trustees?
September of this year.
Did the board express concern about the delay?
Yes, they did.
I'm recollecting, but I don't have it in front of me, that the annual comprehensive financial report for the city, for the district, usually includes some auditors' management concerns with regard to University of the District of Columbia and its procurement practices. So this seems to be fitting right in with those concerns. Am I correct? You're familiar with the auditor's management report?
Yes, we are. Yes,
And
sir.
there are procurement, I'm not sure they're called deficiencies, but they're, I think we call them yellow book concerns.
I believe there were management recommendations for this particular year, but not necessary findings.
With regard to procurement,
That is
correct?
correct.
And what we have before us is a procurement matter.
That is correct.
What actions have been taken so that those concerns or with those concerns will not reoccur?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're doing, again, I explained in my testimony, is really and truly putting the infrastructure in place. But when you look at the org chart within the Office of Contracts and Procurement, you have one director now and no second, no third in terms of capital and that of operating. So one of the things that we're looking to do is put a vice president of contracts and procurement in place, along with two AVPs, one that manages that of operations, the day-to-day operations, and one that does oversight over capital. So we're chewing up the infrastructure there. The other piece that we're doing is leveraging our system. We have a system there, Jagger. We want to, in essence, enable that system to function the way that it should, where that we are putting things into Jagger that triggers let us know automatically when we are close to tipping. And there's a collaboration between the Office of Contracts and Procurement, that of Facilities, and that of the Office of the Chief Operating Officer. So we're chewing up the infrastructure there from a technical perspective, using technical tools to help us manage these procurement transactions, not only from the operating side, but also from the capital side. Lastly, we're also doing training. This is something that we started in 2024, and doing training not only for the individuals working within the Office of Contracts and Procurement, but the university holistically. We understand that that's essential. There are things that are changing on an annual basis, and we believe that having those individuals in the Office of Contracts and Procurement trained annually will help to alleviate some of the issues that we have faced in this particular unit.
So all of that sounds to the good, although a reaction I have is this just making the office top heavy? Because you're talking about a vice president and 2 assistant or associate vice presidents?
Yeah.
I
No,
get having adequate number of people, but do they all need to be vice presidents?
we do need a contracting officer, a chief contracting officer, and that aligns with other, I see that no different than the Office of IT, the Office of Facilities and Real Estate Management. Right now, you have one director of contract and procurement. It's simply not sufficient and adequate enough to manage the amount of work that's coming through that office. What's happening with that director? The director is overseeing the day-to-day operations and also responsible for monitoring contracts.
All right, so that speaks for additional people.
Mhm.
How many folks do you have in the contracting office now?
There's approximately 11 individuals.
11, and 11 is not enough.
No.
Okay, but why do you need to have a vice president and 2 assistant vice presidents?
Right now, the way it's structured is a director. And with the director, I believe that we need a higher level individual in that role to oversee not only the capital side, but also the operating side. So we need that structure in place. With the amount of contracts and the amount of requisitions that's going through that office necessitate additional assistance on the operating side and the capital
Well,
side.
you're making the case for additional people, but my question has to do with, I want to say C-suite, a vice president and 2 associate vice presidents. So the current director, is the current director going to be the vice president?
That particular position is out on the market now. We're recruiting for that position. She will have the opportunity to apply, but that's being competitive through that of a search firm.
Okay, so let's say she applies and she becomes the vice president? Let's say she doesn't apply. So there will now be a vice president, 2 associate vice presidents, and a director.
That is correct.
It seems like an awful lot of management.
Well, I think, Chairman, when you look at the shortcomings in that particular area, we need to chew it up. We need to have levels of expertise in this particular area so that we're not before you.
I don't disagree with that, but do they all need to be vice presidents?
I think at the end of the day, I think one needs to be a vice president and 2 associate vice presidents because of the level of work that's coming through that office. I think it needs a higher caliber of expertise on the capital and the operating side.
All right.
And Chairman, I will also share with you, that assessment was done over a year, meaning I've been working with that of the Office of Contracts and Procurement, assessing the structure, looking at the workflow, assessing the talent, and came to that conclusion after a year. This particular unit was under the Office of the General Counsel. It was then transitioned to the Office of the Chief Operating Officer, and it took a year of assessing those individuals in that particular office before coming to the conclusion that we needed this level of talent there.
Again, I'm not as much concerned about the number of people as the fact that they're all vice presidents. But let me keep moving. So Something fundamental here that I'm not getting is that, first of all, if the university is going to have work done, it should have a contract, correct?
Correct,
And the contract should be written, correct?
correct,
Okay. And if there's going to be a change to the contract, that should be in writing, correct?
correct,
And it would be ultimately a change order or modification to the contract, correct?
correct.
Okay, somehow that seems to have been somewhat short-circuited by, well, you all keep doing some work because we don't want to interrupt the progress of the contract, and we'll get around to the written document later. That seems injudicious.
I think, Chairman, when we go back and look at what has transpired here, yes, there was a failure. There's a failure in terms of our wanting to move forward with the project and adhering to proper procurement regulations. There's no question about that. What should have taken place at the end of the day would have been a stop in work. We should have stopped the work, allow the change orders to go through the proper procedures, which would have been to our board and then to the council. Even if that meant delaying the project, that would have been the proper procedures for the university to take, and we did not take that.
I don't know it well enough to argue with you on that, but it doesn't seem to me that it necessarily has to be that way. If you have a contract to do work and you want to make some changes to that contract, you should know what changes you want. It shouldn't be, well, we're going to have to stop work and figure that out. That there is an assessment upfront, what it is the change is, and a sense of what the cost is. And it sounds like that deliberative work was put off, what was going to come later. Let me ask you this. Before this contract was issued, was there an independent government estimate?
Yes, sir.
And that independent government estimate would have informed the contract, correct?
The BCD, correct.
Okay, and then the contract was, had a guaranteed maximum price?
Yes, sir.
And the contract was issued at 8.7, almost $8.8 million.
Correct.
So how does the guaranteed maximum price become $4 million more? Which is help me here, 50% increase.
Yes, sir. And this is a case where there were two components of the project that had not been taken into consideration at the beginning, where the design was developed almost 10 years ago. So those two big components are the renovation of the HVAC system in that area, and also the IT renovation component. Those two components were not part of the original design and were needed for this project to be completed. And there are different reasons as to why they were not part of that project.
I have to say I'm not impressed. So I get that the contract was, or the work was originally envisioned, looking at Mr. Franklin's testimony, originally initiated in 2016, which is 6 years before the contract was issued. But the contract was issued in 2022, correct? So how come this wasn't figured out then? How come a contract's issued based on a 6-year-old scope that clearly was inadequate, since you all decided you needed to increase it by 50%?
So on the IT component that needed to be added was initially during the design of the library project, the IT component was meant to be part of a university IT infrastructure upgrade. So that was supposed to take place separately. Because of how long it took for the project to go from design to the construction, then those two projects did not align. And we ended up excluding the IT component of the library from the overall university project. So it needed to be added to this project because of the difference in the timeline of those two. And for the HVAC component, it's my understanding that back in 2016, we did not have the proper resources to have included, or even the report that determined that the university, the recommendation for the university to decentralize the steam or the heating system and make it more localized. So only after the library project was advancing, it became clear that those two separate components needed to be added to the project in order to be.
So I
included.
sort of understand what you're saying about IT, that there was a university-wide or campus-wide project and it was decided to pull the library out and make it part of this. But I'm not getting that with the HVAC. HVAC, last I checked, is kind of fundamental to any building.
No, absolutely. It's what I meant is that the way in which the recommendation came for in decentralize the system, that was not known when the design was being put together. The report, I believe, for decentralized.
So that was not known in 2016,
The
HVAC. What about in 2022? I mean, 1 year later, you're doing the modification.
No, there is no excuse for that, to have modified the design. And that's what we ended up doing after the project had already.
So, the committee's tried to be very supportive of the university, and we have tried to, every year when we have the budget, see if we can't modify the mayor's proposal to add more resources for capital. But this just strikes me as sloppy. Sorry, but it just strikes me as sloppy that you do a guaranteed maximum price of $8.7 million. At least that's kind of how I read this. And 2 years later, am I right? 2 years later, you're 50% more at 12 million. I don't even get what the phrase guaranteed maximum price means if the amount can be exceeded by 50%. And change orders oftentimes reflect poor planning for the initial contract. Anyone disagree with me on that?
No disagreement on that assessment. And that's part of the reason, or the reason why we are proposing enhancements to avoid change orders happening in the future. As a matter of fact, we have started already modifying and enhancing the way we go about our projects. We're increasing the number of reviews and the depth in which we are reviewing the drawings to avoid and make sure that everything is captured on that design before we even go and bid on the project or put it on the market. We're also engaging with the owners and all stakeholders to make sure that there are no changes in the scope from their perspective once the project has been initiated. And we're also planning on making the designers more accountable to avoid any unforeseen conditions in terms of identifying and developing the drawings completely. So it's a three-pronged where the university has some blame as to adding scope to the work, but also making sure that we properly review all the drawings, all the design before it goes to the market for bid.
So this is going to sound snarky, but then again, we've gotten this contract, a year after the work was completed. I'm not looking for more bureaucracy. I'm looking for smarter. And I get that maybe you need to rethink and have more management, but when you mention reviews and more reviews, and maybe that's all necessary, I'm not really judging that. I'm just making the point that to me, the value here is not having more bureaucracy. It's having smarter work. Somebody should have figured out. In fact, actually, let me ask this. The university's general counsel, do they sign the contract? Who signs the contract?
The contract is signed by the contract officer in the Office
Okay.
of Contracts and Procurement.
And does it get a legal sufficiency review from your general counsel?
It does.
And the general counsel didn't think, this needs board approval and council approval. What's the failure there?
I think the failure remains on the level of the Office of the Chief Operating Officer, along with contracts and procurement and facilities. I think it was brought to the attention of the General Counsel after the work has been completed.
But didn't the general counsel look at the contract modification to see whether it was legally sufficient?
I'm not sure.
So you are doing contract documents without they're all going to the general counsel?
All documents with respects to contracting does go through the General Counsel's office. But again, the General Counsel was not aware of this infraction until it actually after it took place.
I'm going to press it one more time. There should be certain people who know that contracts over a certain amount have to go to the board for approval and come to the council for approval. And just to remind you, if it had all been timely, this would have just gone through on passive review. We wouldn't be having a hearing. You wouldn't have had to submit. There wouldn't be a bill. You wouldn't have to wait. This would all have just like smoothed right through. But there should be people who are aware, like the general counsel. So wouldn't the general counsel have seen a modification number 2 in the value of $2 million?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, and shouldn't the general counsel then have said, like, light bulb, board has to approve this?
Yes, I think the issue here becomes that we finalized the numbers. We actually knew exactly how much it was going to cost around June of this year, 2025. And that was in part because of the delay in getting and confirming numbers from the contractor. So once we have that, and as soon as we understood that this needed to go to the board, we started putting together that package.
So it's okay to be authorizing work without knowing how much it's going to cost? Hey, can you come by and install a new HVAC system and new IT work and tell me later how much I'm going to have to pay?
So the BCDs allow for that instruction to the contractor to proceed with the work, even if the final numbers have not been finalized.
Did you have an estimate?
Yes, sir. We had.
You did have an estimate.
Correct. The actual numbers became way more than what.
And so even though you had an estimate, and even though you had paperwork like a directive, and even though you knew you were going to have a contract modification, the general counsel is not involved?
I believe they are at the point where that's when that.
Well, I think this needs to be looked at as well as you are looking at your systems. I mean, again, I'm not looking for a lot of bureaucracy here, but there should be a few people like I would have said the director of procurement, who knows that anything over $1 million is going to have to go to the board, if not the council. Council's going to have a hearing at 8:30 in the morning. The board is just going to be in a position to be angry, which I wouldn't want if I had a board over me. The director should know that. The general counsel should know that. Nobody should be doing any of this work without the general counsel being consulted. Do you disagree?
No, Chairman, we do not disagree. And that again is the failure of the Office of the Chief Operating Officer, not ensuring that the checks and balances was done and that contract and the change orders in essence would have gone through the general counsel prior to submission to that of the council and the board.
There's a statement in the contract summary. It's paragraph P. The amount and date of any expenditure of funds by the district pursuant to the contract prior to its submission to the council for approval. And the answer is the university has not expended any funds prior to the submission. So what has been paid and what still has to be paid? Or has it all been paid?
Payments associated with this change order have not been made.
So the contractor, a year after completing the work, is still waiting for $2 million.
That's correct.
The rest of the contract has been paid. The roughly.
It's my understanding that it has.
Do you have a sense of how that makes the contractor feel? That's 10 million, roughly 10,600,000 the contractor's been paid and roughly $2 million the contractor is owed. Do you have a sense of how the contractor feels about that? Anybody want to volunteer an answer?
Yeah, so we have been in contact with the contractor throughout this process. And to be very frank, it's, again, it's the failure on us. The contractor is not pleased that the length of payment has been over a year. In essence, the university has an obligation to, once we receive invoices, to pay them within 30 to 90 days, and we have not done that. We have been in contact again, communicating with the contractor. The contractor have done substantial work for the university, and they understand that we're trying to go through this process, but it's on our end, our failure that resulted in this delay in payment as well.
So if the contractor is not happy, what do you think that does to the next time you have a capital project and the Consys could bid on it? Do you think that makes them happy to bid, or you think maybe they bid with a premium in there to cover
Well,
expenses like this?
I can't speak to that, but I do believe that when the university fails to pay contractors, any contractor, in a timely manner, it impacts our credibility. And at the end of the day, it impacts our ability to do business fairly. So I do believe that there is some adverse impact in terms of our failure to pay a contractor, any contractor, in a timely manner.
I appreciate your saying that, and I feel like I'm lecturing you, but I do think it just needs to be said for the record that the value with competitive bids is that we get a number of different companies that will bid on a project and they compete. And so then we maybe get better prices. But when they all know that it's going to take a year and a half after the work is done to get paid, they may not want to bid. So then we have fewer bids, meaning less competitive process. And they probably include in their bids a premium to cover their carrying costs, in this case, carrying $2 million for a couple of years. Just saying. So it was realized that the board needed to be informed in February of 2025?
Chairman Bryce Lear, Deputy Chief Operating Officer. It was realized that the board needed to be informed in April of 2025. That was the point in which we realized that we were going to need to combine BCD2 and BCD3, which would therefore exceed the $1 million threshold requiring board and council approval.
And what was the thinking with regard to submission to the council in terms of timing?
We understood that we were going to need to submit the retroactive package to the council. We actually worked on developing that at the same time we were working to take that package to our board, which needed to have that approval first prior to coming to council.
So when did the board approve it?
The board approved it in September 2025.
And it came to us a month later.
Correct.
Mr. Franklin, would you submit to us after the hearing a list of all of the vice presidents and associate vice presidents at the university? ideally categorized by, I guess, office. So within the office of, and this would include vacant positions as well. So within the office of procurements, you would list vice president, associate vice presidents. Within the next office, again, vice president, associate vice presidents, and so forth. If you could do that in the next week,
You'll have that by close of business tomorrow.
okay. I do not have any other questions for you at this time. I do appreciate that you're accepting responsibility. I am concerned that procurement has been a problem with the university's procurement has been a problem noted in our annual financial reports. And I'm seeing that with this, that there've been problems a little bit more pervasive, and so they need to be addressed.
Understood, Chairman.
And I think I'll leave it with that. As I indicated at the beginning, this has been a hearing on this contract. It's Bill 26-446 with the University of the District of Columbia. The record in this matter will close on Friday at 5 p.m. on Friday, January 2nd, 2026. The time is 9:40.